moment, I'll introduce you to today's speaker. There's a bit of housekeeping that I'd like to go through first, if I may. This afternoon's presentation will be followed by a short question and answer session. So please feel free to submit your questions if you could use the Q&A function below, and we'll try to get through as many of them as we can. Otherwise, we'll arrange to provide some written responses to the key themes that come through the questions. Please refrain from raising your hand during the session, as we won't necessarily be able to respond directly as we're going through. But we'll keep an eye on the questions that are coming in and present them to Paul at the end of the session. So as sticky questions as you can manage would be gratefully received. The webinar is being recorded and may be accessed via the CQI website at a later date. We'll provide information about that when it's available. And alongside that, you'll find previous webinars from World Quality Week and beyond, covering a vast range of subjects, including membership, CPD sessions, knowledge sessions, and specific webinars around our World Quality Week program. So please take some time to explore that gallery and try and identify those subjects that will be of interest to you and that you'd like to include in your program of professional development. On which note, please do remember to include this session in your CPD record, not just by way of logging your attendance, but give thoughts to what you'll have learnt through this session, what you've gleaned from our conversations, and how this may affect your day-to-day work. Because this cycle of plan, do, study or reflect and act is absolutely key to effective and meaningful professional development. So please spend some time considering how this session contributes to that later on. Today, as I'm sure you're all aware, is the midpoint of World Quality Week, and I'm sure you've all been engaged in a variety of activities already. This year, World Quality Week focuses on quality conscience, doing the right thing. Now, we exist in a world facing increasing societal, environmental, and economic pressures. The challenges of exploiting and assuring the effective, efficient, and appropriate use of technology, of responding to change in the natural and built environment, and in a world where workforce, workflow, and workplace have all been disrupted by a pandemic, and where the fragility of supply chains is being exposed, the importance of doing the right thing is arguably of ever increasing importance. Organisations face a high degree of scrutiny and public accountability, so it's incumbent on organisations to do the right thing, not just when no one is watching, but obviously, proudly, and in transparent view of customers, suppliers, regulators, society at large, but also customers and stakeholders within the organisation. Now, doing the right thing is not something that happens in isolation. It's not something that an individual or a single team or function can take sole responsibility for. And it's not a tick box exercise. It's not a simple CSR program, nor is it a one-off event marked only by World Quality Week. But it's a constant strategic, operational and cultural endeavour towards demonstrable action for the betterment of the organisation, the people within it, and the communities, the built and natural environment affected by its products, services, or activities. Now, part and parcel of this is having not just the right attitude, the right objectives, policies, and frameworks, but having the right tools and techniques at our disposal, and the capability of knowing not just how to use them, but of knowing which to use, when, and why. So through this rather unsubtle lens, I've got the great pleasure of introducing you to Paul Vaughan, Fellow of the CQI and Head of Quality for Emico, to lead you through today's webinar. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Alex. Let's see if I can pinch the screen. Right. Well, yes, good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. And as Alex said, selecting the right tool or quality tool and the pitfalls of when you don't, which is in celebration and hopefully in line with the theme of this World Quality Week. A quick bit about this. Do this bit first. Sorry. Let's move on to the interesting bit. So a quick bit about this handsome devil here. Well, I think it's a great photo, showing my enthusiasm and outgoing personality. And well, not as according to my ex-friends and family, who reckon it looks more like a severe case of trapped wind. So my name's Paul Vaughan, and as that says, I have over 35 years of experience working in numerous quality-related roles, and that's across 6, well, I'd argue 7 diverse industries. I'm a fellow at the Chartered Quality Institute, as well as a fellow of the International Institute of Risk and Safety Management. And in the last 10 years, I've been on a quest, a genuine quest to start giving back and trying to make a real difference in quality. I have in part managed to do this through my voluntary work, such as being, well, an international quality awards judge, CQI mentor, regular article contributor to both CQI Knowledge and Quality World publications, an active audit SIG committee member, and in addition to being a self-published author, I also sit on the CQI Contents Advisory Panel. My ethos, well, it's about sensible quality, providing value-adding and effective quality, opposed to just purely being about compliance, and using persuasive anecdotal arguments on why something needs to be done, and more importantly, listening back. Hopefully you would have noted in here that there are no references to me being a master tools person or anything like that, because as that, I am definitely not. So a legitimate question you might be thinking is, why am I delivering a presentation on quality tool selection? Well, last year, I came up with an idea, which was, well, based on a slight frustration on my part of seeing all those excellent tools out there, particularly those being shared by the Quality World magazine or online, but with no real overall or holistic guidance as to how and when, more importantly, to use them. Hence the launch of the Quality Tool Selector. Now, I'll come back to the term quality later. I liken myself to one of those, you know, it'd be a really great if type of person, a thinker and not a doer. So I was both surprised and pleased that I'd actually managed to at least assemble the prototype, the startings for the tool selector. And out of that came the blog article for this World Quality Week. If I may briefly dwell on the Quality Tool Selector, it currently comprises of 25 tools, ranging from simple control charts to problem-solving tools. And it also identifies which of the 8 stages of the product, project, or service lifecycle would be the most effective time to apply the tool. For anyone who would like to see an in-focus version of the tool selector, you can download this via the CQI Knowledge section, which hopefully that might just be entering the chat in terms of a link as I'm talking. Now, my intention was for one of my esteemed peers to take the concept on and develop it into an effective tool for the quality profession. And by that, providing a summary of each tool and putting in links from the tool selector to the tool, or at the very least, a reference to its best source. Unfortunately, this is yet to happen. So genuinely, are there any volunteers out there who could help me develop this or help CQI evolve it? Because as well, at the moment, I feel a bit like the captain of the USA 4x100 meter relay team. Apologies if there are any of my colleagues the other side of the pond on this call. So one might also ask if the selecting of the right tool is synonymous with the theme quality conscience, doing the right thing. Well, yes, it is. It is slightly tenuous in terms of its link, but I will explain that. But for now, I'd like to quickly mention a couple of my other contributions that are equally, if not more relevant to this theme. Own Your Signature, which was published as an opinion piece late last year, reminding all of the importance of reputational consequences when you sign or verify a document or activity. It has a strong message. That is, your signature could in fact be signing someone else's life away. It's all too glib to say, oh, I feel like I'm signing my life away, but your signature could also be signing someone else's life away if it's a a skipped check or whatever. So, and in addition to that, in the autumn issue of the Quality World, I co-produced this article with my dear friend who might be on the call, Billy Rankin, describing a quality dilemma of a missed inspection. And again, the consequences of the resulting action or non-action. Oh, and just in case there actually is an MD of a company with the same fictitious quality RS name, it was purely hypothetical. And well, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? Now, as I alluded to earlier, I won't be going into the tool specifics, but what I would like to talk about is the thought process of and the factors in selecting the right tools. Apologies for repeating the article and blog mantra, but for me, the link to doing the right things comes down to the principles of the TQM tool, departmental purpose analysis, which, come to think of it, doesn't actually feature in the quality tool selector. So replacing the departmental with organization, how do we know what's the right thing to do? Here we go. Are we doing the right things? Are we doing the right things right? And can we do them better? So we're going to talk about PDCA later, but there we go. That's the departmental purpose analysis. Our quality tools are undoubtedly an integral part of the process. In fact, in most cases, they enable the process and its output. And what do I mean by that? Well, firstly, we have an input, the bit that gets consumed by the process, the output, the product of the process, the controller. And then we have the enabler, the resource, the competence, the people, and the tools. So yes, the tool is very much integral to the process. Quick bit on the what is a quality tool. So that's a good starting point. What is a quality tool? And no, I'm actually asking you, the audience, as my research couldn't come up with an informed answer. However, there are lots of informative references to tools. For example, a device or implement, especially one held in the hand, used to carry out a particular function. Okay. Something such as an instrument or apparatus used in performing an operation or necessary in the practice of vocation or profession. Getting warmer, I think. I even checked the ISO 9000 fundamentals of vocabulary standard, where there were 2 references to tools. But again, even then, neither were preceded by the word quality. So, in the absence of a formal definition and straight out of the Paul Vaughan's take on quality, I'm going to say any device, application or tool that is used to support and deliver the quality of all products, processes and services. It can take the form of a chart, technique or strategy that can be used to ensure that quality objectives are achieved and maintained. Well, I doubt if that would get the crystal mark seal of approval, but it's the best that I can come up with. So again, out to the audience, if somebody's aware of a better definition, I would certainly appreciate that. factors for choosing the right tool. Here, I'd like to go through a number of key factors that one should consider when choosing the right quality tool. But just before I do, I'd like to share some of my endeavors with you. So in following the most commonly used solution in the world, I thought I would find some inspiration for this presentation by Googling how many quality tools are there. And guess what? The Googleoids could only find a mere 2 billion results. Thankfully, I had my parental lock on. Otherwise, well, God knows how many other tools I might have got. 2 billion though. For a famous quote from the Jaws movies, we're going to need a bigger tool selector. As you might expect, there were lots of references to the 7 basic tools. Though, well, so looking at the 19 references on the first 4 pages, not one was actually listing the same tools. Though, to be fair, it looked like some of the tools were essentially the same, but some modern genius had decided to jazz up the name. And I'll always remember one of my creative colleagues referring to an arachnid chart that looked remarkably like one of Microsoft's spider radar charts. So let's start looking at some of the factors. Business objectives, yes. So the tool needs to relate to your organization's business objectives and support the strategy to achieve them. From my experience, if it doesn't, it's probably because a member of the top management fell in love with the tool and its bells and whistles when it was demoed. Plan, do, check, and act. And as that says, the PDCA is fundamental to what we do. And that's whether it's planning an activity, an audit program tool or app, doing the activity, could be an automated go, no-go gauging, checking the activity, control charts or anything like that, or acting on the results of the activity, for example, carrying out a lessons learned. Indeed, it does. It starts from the top. If you haven't got that buy-in from your top management, then it's already failed before it started. And get it costed, plan its implementation, and get it agreed. Then there's no excuses for its premature demise. So where are you in the life cycle? Because you don't really want to be doing an FMEA at the commissioning stage or conversely, a customer satisfaction survey at the development stage. Are there any timescale constraints? Maybe you'll need an abridged tool. And don't forget, there's probably 2 billion of them out there to choose the right one from. Competence. Yeah. Who's going to drive it? What type of level of training will you need? Internal, external? And going back to one of the previous ones, is it costed? Another one, measurement of the tool performance. How do you know if it is effective, yielding an improvement and or supporting the achievement of the objectives? I once worked for an organization who brought in a safety and communication initiative / tool. We were 18 months in when the organization was asked by the client to objectively demonstrate the effectiveness and improvement from the initiative / tool. We couldn't. And for me, it's a bit like an organization saying that it's going to reduce its carbon footprint without knowing what it actually is in the first place. Digital technology. Well, what can I say? It's happening, so embrace it. And just think, having your reporting, flagging, and trending analysis all done for you, all coming from the same place. The pitfalls, choosing the wrong tool. And well, there's the first pitfall example. Unless it's in a Tom and Jerry cartoon, mice don't really like cheese. So we're already using the wrong tool component. And I do love this saying, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Arguably, in my experience, the pitfalls have predominantly been when the previous factors that we've just discussed haven't been duly considered. For example, the tool doesn't align with the organization's objectives, and the output of the tool is not what the owner or the organization really wants. And well, here are a few pitfall examples. Yeah, been there. How many quality professionals have experienced the finance tool that sprouts arms and legs, ends up running goods inwards, and before you know it, you've had to change your effective non-conformance and audit processes to accommodate them on the finance tool. Yeah, before you get one of the thousands of tool developers out there to demonstrate their best app ever, I suggest you use the departmental purpose analysis or any other suitable tool to formulate a list of what is important for your organization. It will definitely help maintain the quality focus. Yeah, driving the checklist or checklist driven. This one is probably more about using the correct tool wrongly. The tool in this case is the audit checklist, which all IRCA certified audit trainers will recommend as part of the audit planning. For me, I will tend to cover this via an audit outline plan, where I will identify the areas that I intend to look at. I will be I will be looking for and the types of records, that I'd be looking for to verify the process activity. There have admittedly been times or a few occasions where I've found myself auditing in unfamiliar territory, and I have to use, and I find that I have to use a checklist. But even then, as with my outline plan, these are purely an aid memoir. In essence, they help me to get to that point in the audit. I once worked for an organization where we were required to use audit protocols, another word for a checklist, which basically comprised of a large set of closed questions that required a yes or no answer, very black and white. If it was a no, then it was a non-conformity, no arguing. Now, bearing in mind that this was post ISO 9001-2000, I really struggled with how we could actually make a statement on the effectiveness of the process being audited. And not necessarily fondly, I will always remember the time when having recently joined a construction company, I arranged to sit in one of my site quality managers' internal quality audits. He was auditing the construction manager using an extremely prescriptive checklist. Halfway through the audit, the construction manager went off piece, as sometimes they do, and started talking about a construction quality issue that had clearly been bothering him. To my bewilderment, the site quality manager double-checked his checklist and said, well, we'll forget about that as it's not in my checklist. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. From experience, I've always found it difficult to persuade process owners of the value in auditing, and here was a golden opportunity only to be thwarted by a slave-like adherence to an audit checklist. Now, as I mentioned in my introduction, I am an active member of the CQI Audit SIG, where I've produced a number of bite-sized video reels to get people thinking about audits. The PowerPoint version of the short video I'm about to show you was very much inspired by this not in my checklist event. So please enjoy. So here we have a checklist, which I must say is somewhat devoid of any of Mr. Kipling's open questioning friends. Yeah, do you do what you are meant to do? Really? And well, there we go, slavishly following the checklist down that tunnel. Meanwhile, the really useful products of the audit whistle by. And the message, Sometimes you need to look up from your checklist, otherwise you won't know what you could be missing. This one's close to my heart, which takes me back to my flight simulation days, where I used to visit a supplier, and we'll say vendor A, to carry out an inspection of something called a flight simulator floor structure base. Comprising of a welded steel lattice construction, these bases measured approximately 8 by 5 meters in area, rather large and rather difficult if it comes to inspecting. Similarly, we would have to check vendor B's products, though generally at our goods inwards. The base had over 1,400 holes, 200 plus lateral dimensions, leveling, and over 400 welds to check. In summary, there were over 2,000 defect opportunities. And well, contrasting this with vendor B's bar, we were looking at essentially 2 defect opportunities. Applying a P chart attribute approach of recording 1 and above defects as a non-conformity, we would consistently show the base as 1 times defect equals 1 times non-conformity, which equals 100% vendor rating reject rate for vendor A, and likewise for vendor B. This obviously put vendor A's vendor rating performance at a distinct disadvantage. So to address this unfair comparison, we applied a U-chart approach to measure the defects against the defect opportunities, which, as you can see, help level the playing field. Having given you a number of problems, I thought I would finish on some quality tool pointers, or in other words, some more painful lessons that I've learned on the way. So, well, yeah, what do I mean by Ishikawa's self-perpetuating fishbone? Well, if we're going to use the fishbone, let's get our full money's worth out of it. So starting with a standard fishbone with the classic cause and failure catchments, well, yeah, we're going to need an effect, the problem statement. And our example here is no product identification. We then facilitate the brainstorm, capturing the causes or failure modes. For example, no documented process, poor training. And wherever possible, we should start spurring off. For example, labels missing, poor adhesion. Now we're getting closer to the real root cause, but are we there yet? Probably not. And this is where the self-perpetuating bit comes in. That is, we can grab this spur and make it the effect or the problem statement. And we can keep boning down until we are happy that we have got to the real root cause. So is one tool enough? Well, probably not, especially when we're carrying out problem-solving activities like root cause analysis. It's not a single defined methodology. And according to the big wide web, there are millions of tools to choose from. And so in most cases, we'll need to choose more than one tool. For example, a conglomeration of affinity diagrams, 5 whys, fault tree analysis, Ishikawa, fishbone. So yes, in some cases, we'll need more than one tool. Oh, yes. So right up there with my frustrations of just seeing commercial and health and safety risk registers is when I see issues, events that have already happened, and vague risk statements in a risk register. For example, people plus skills. Well, what does that mean? And material prices. When carrying out problem solving, it's absolutely critical that we begin the process with a meaningful problem statement. And that goes the same here for risk management. Start right, finish right. So let's put these statements into a risk context. So people plus skills, not having the appropriate competence to deliver projects as a result of losing or not having the right people and skills within the process. Yeah. And material prices, escalation of material prices, putting additional financial burden on their procurement and subsequent loss of profit. Now, we all know what the originator means, and we can start from a much better position. Don't call it quality. Sounds like a line out of 40 Towers. And well, it takes me back to my earlier comment about naming the quality tool selector. Some people sadly have a misguided perception about quality, particularly about the quality team, I hasten to add. And well, incidentally, in showing my age, my kids have actually pointed out that it's now in fact cool to wear sliders with the socks. But I do my best to correct this quality perception via my Mythbusters. So, for example, a non-conformance Mythbuster and also an audit Mythbuster. But as per the comments here, there's still unconverted people out there. And I know I shouldn't be advocating treating these people like children, but to me, it's like feeding your little ones with bland, textureless baby food. Sometimes in order to get them to open their mouths, you need to turn it into a train. Although I'm sure you'll all agree with me that the choo-choo tool selector doesn't quite have the same ring. There are two Y's in Pareto. What am I going on about? Well, I quite often see the following represented as a Pareto chart, which just with the one y-axis, the quantities would probably be best described as a par chart. So let's add a second y-axis expressed in the cumulative percentage and make it more like a Pareto chart. Now we're looking more like a Pareto analysis. Often I'll see a jumbled correlation between the two y-axes, and really to counter this, you'll need to manually make the total of occurrences, quantity of defects in this example, as the maximum quantity of your y1 axis, and the maximum y2 cumulative percentage axis as 100%, where quite often it will come up as 120%, and you won't be getting your first point on top of the first bar. Wow, a proper Pareto chart. And although not quite an 80-20 in this case, we can clearly show that 71% of the problems can be found in 20% of the causes. A good lesson to be learned, and yes, a good one being the last one. So when I was young, fit and healthy a few years ago, and well, as well as running relays, I used to play football, albeit at a reasonable level, but my wife would always be perplexed as to how long the team would spend in the changing rooms after the game. Well, I'd kid her that there was only one hairdryer between the team, and then we would need to put the hair gel on and so on. The reality, though, was that no one wanted to be the first one to leave the changing room, because that's when the real analysis would begin. And as an analogy, I often see this in lessons learned workshops where people are fearful and awkward, feel awkward about coming across as being critical to someone's face. And I guess that's why 99% of lessons learned workshops will not have the customer, or at the very least, the supplier in attendance. And yet, how many of our organizations use the word collaborative in their marketing or promotions? So get your project or program managers to be brave. Invite the external interested parties along, and you never know, they might actually get feedback that they wasn't already aware of. And that's the end of that. Right, come out.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Right.
Magically reappear on screen for you. That was a really interesting walkthrough.
Thank you.
And we've had some great questions coming in the Q&A, and a couple directly as well. So please feel free to keep sending them in. We're going to use the next 10 minutes or so to explore some of the questions and some of the themes that have been raised. As I said, if you post a question and we don't have time to get round to it, then we'll try and provide a written response to accompany the recording of this webinar. So don't feel shy in posting your questions. Paul, there are a couple of things that I thought would be interesting to get into in a bit more detail. There have been a couple of questions around, you know, what are the causes behind things going wrong? You know, in your experience or opinion, is it a case of people choosing the wrong tool for the job, or is it more a case of the right one being used poorly, being used incorrectly? And I think supplementary to that is, you know, how do organisations then reduce the risk of that happening?
That's a very good question. For me, I've seen both, sort of touched on in that presentation, but quite often some of the factors there are around the training. That yes, it may well be the correct tool being used, but maybe we haven't got the competent people or appropriately trained people in terms of using it. Like I say, other factors, quite often we end up inheriting tools from that's been used. So, for example, in the example I gave in terms of the finance tool, it literally does grow arms and legs, and then before you know it, you're having to use that tool and to adjust what you do, what works well for you as an organisation, which tends to be wrong. There is also an argument that we do sometimes use the wrong tool. Maybe it was the right tool at the time, but as it evolves or as the business evolves, that may no longer be the right tool.
I think that's a really interesting element to this, because, you know, it's not just around the capability, the competence in using tools, nor indeed in the decision making, in making sure that the right ones are used, although that is clearly important. But I think what you've touched on there is this idea that you know, a tool or a system for deploying that tool, once designed, once developed, it's not then constant, is it? You know, it requires review, it requires improvement, as does any element of a system for managing quality or managing your business. So I think you know, the element there in training, not just individuals but teams and wider organisations, is vitally important. But accepting that situations change, that the context of the organisation changes, and so the context of the tools and the tools themselves will necessarily have to change as well.
Yeah, well, sorry, Alex, but absolutely, and as it was mentioned in the Audit SIG conference as well, the fact that, you know, the digital transformation that we have to adapt, or literally we'll get left behind. So in terms of using the tools that more suited to where we are in this digital technology as well.
Yeah, and certainly the challenge of exploiting the disruptive and innovative technologies in governance, assurance, and improvement is a challenge that we're all going to face, I think. No matter how firmly one believes that the principles of quality may be a constant, but the tools at our disposal for actually conducting that work are changing. And if we fail to exploit that as individuals within organisations, but the organisations we work for themselves face significant threats in falling behind.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think there's a really important element around competitiveness and the sustained success of organisations in being able to adapt to use and exploit changing tools and new tools that come to our become available to us. I think this, to a certain extent, relates to a couple of other questions we've had come in around, picking the most suitable tools for specific industries, whether it's construction or whether it's healthcare or hospital settings. Do you think that there is, a correct tool that's specific to industries? Do you think there's a way to determine, this is the toolkit for pharmaceuticals, this is the toolkit for food safety, or do we need to think more holistically about the equipment, about the artifacts that we have at our disposal as quality professionals?
That's an interesting one, actually. Just thinking in terms of the quality tool selector, Alex, that maybe we can expand that, because we've got sort of stages of life cycle, but maybe we could expand that in terms of industries. Although there's an argument, so if you think lots of the older tools that have stood the test of time, that you'll find that they're used across, or they can be used across most industries, but I'm sure there must be some specific industry specific tools that would relate there. So, for example, that Ishikawa, the 5 whys, that and albeit problem solving, but you could apply, you could in theory, well, you can apply that in any sort of industry sector.
Now, if we can go back just a couple of points, we were talking about choosing the correct tool, making sure that individuals have the training for doing so, and you mentioned quite early on in the presentation, aspects around human error. There's, I'm sure we're all familiar with the quote that people don't fail, but processes do. So, do you think that there's any excuse for within a mature system for managing quality, for managing your organisation? Is there an excuse for the wrong tool being used?
For me, the excuse would be the fact that it hadn't been properly planned and thought out. It's one of the things that the current company that I'm working for, that in any tool we have to put together a what do we call it, it's in terms of a project, you have to write it out like a feasibility at the start, and to make that argument. So I would argue that maybe in terms of the process, that if it's the wrong tool, that the appropriate planning and level of planning hasn't gone into that to actually determine. And again, to my favorite tool that's not in the tool selector, the departmental purpose analysis, just to identify and to try to create that link back into the business objectives. That ought to be one of the gates, or one of the questions. Is this going to help the business achieve the objectives? And if not, then you need to be asking a few more questions.
Yeah. And I think that probably comes to the heart of one of the new questions that's come in about how to get leaders to buy in to the deployment of quality tools.
Yes, yeah, and right from day one, if particularly if you can get a sponsor, so I would suggest that you go after one of the leaders, the directors who are more sort of quality thinking, more sort of pragmatic in that approach, and get them involved from day one. And you've got that sponsorship, and you've got that to the top management, because yeah, I've seen it, not necessarily done it myself, but where a hell of a lot of work's gone into finding the right tool, only for it to be put in front of the top management, the board, and for them to turn it down. So it's really key to get your or at least an individual, a member of that senior leadership team on board from day one and behind it.
Yeah. Look, now I'm gonna pull you up on something here, Paul, because earlier you just used the phrase your favourite tool.
Yes.
And we've been talking here about, you know, making sure that we're choosing the right tool for the right job. And you know, it's inevitable that you know that individuals will have tools, will have techniques, will even have colleagues that, you know, they've worked with in the past, and they've got good results. So they think, right, that's worked before, it'll work again. So how do you try and remove that prejudice, which is bound to be there in having your favorite tool, and really think critically about, you know, what is the right thing for this job?
Well, that's a very good question. I guess I would liken it to if you were looking to procure an item, that you would have to go out to 3 potential suppliers. So maybe that's a solution to get around your of not your, but the individual's prejudice, or mine in the case of the DPA, and to actually look at more than one solution. Because but that really is a very good question, and haven't necessarily answered it, I must admit. But yeah.
No, I just thought that was an interesting one. It was a bit of a cheeky one to pull you to put to you, but because we all do have our favourite ways of working, don't we? And it's easy to default to what we feel comfortable and confident through experience. So, you know, really keeping a focus on you know, the problem that we're trying to solve and the right way to go about it. I saw someone just commented, I've lost it now, along the lines of, you know, tools coming in and out of fashion, and that can affect how and when they're used, and how common and prevalent their use is. And I think we probably saw that with lean. And we may well be facing an environment again where you know, organisations are looking for efficiencies and effectiveness measures, and many, I'm sure, will be reaching for the Lean Six Sigma toolbox, where, you know, potentially there could be other tools or combinations of tools that can be used.
Absolutely.
I'm conscious of time. We've got a couple of housekeeping things to cover at the end, but there's just one other you know, thread that I'd like to unpick a little bit. You know, we've been talking about you know, a quality tool being any device or applicational tool that's used to achieve and maintain quality objectives. I think that's a pretty solid place to start from. Following this train of thought, I mean, any technique, any approach could be considered a quality tool if you're using it to achieve a quality objective, solve a quality problem. And we could have a whole other roundtable discussion on what constitutes a quality problem as opposed to an organisational wide one. But, you know, to what extent does this lead us to a position where the quality professional can use this to engage other teams within their organisation? You know, to look at what other teams are doing, and identify where we as a quality community have tried and tested, or even favourite tools that could be deployed there. and vice versa, where we can learn from other teams across the organisation, or even better, how do we use this as an opportunity to collaborate across teams, so we're solving problems as a cross business community, rather than a quality problem, an engineering problem,
Yeah,
health and safety problem.
Absolutely. Totally get where you're coming from there, Alex. I did a talk last year, or it might have been earlier this year, on problem solving tools, and made the argument that most of those really should be used across health and safety, environmental, and quality. And it was quite interesting. Had a show of hands how many of the attendees have actually done a quality investigation for an incident where it tends to just be you treated through the health and safety accident investigation, when probably a significant percentage of the causes were quality. So there was an argument there that it should just be an investigation, not a health and safety investigation, not a quality investigation, but an investigation that can incorporate all those tools. So I think it was something called HSG 245, which is the standard for accident investigation, opposed to any of the 5 whys and whatever that we'd use in quality. And again, put it in the one toolbox, and we can use it across, rather than saying that's a quality tool, that's health and safety tool. And that goes back to my sort of regret in a way in calling it a quality tool selector, where really it's a tool selector used in quality.
Yeah, and this brings us back to the vital role that the quality profession has in being a cross-organisation function, and also in quality being the responsibility of everyone within the organisation, not just those with Q in their job title. Look, just one other thing quickly. I suppose it's a bit of a semantic question. We were asked the question, what does PESTL with 2 E's in the quality tool selector stand for? I'm sure most of us are familiar with PESTL as political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. But increasingly now, and pertinent to this week's Quality Week theme, we're increasingly seeing ethical and demographic being included within PESTL steepled analysis. For those of you who enjoy an anagram. But I think the point here really is it's appreciating, it's understanding the full scope and context of your organisation, and the needs and expectations of those that are affected by your operations. Look, we've got 2 minutes to go, Paul. So can I first of all say thank you very much for your presentation and for leading this discussion. I hope that we've addressed a lot of the questions that have come in. I found it really interesting to get your take on quality tools, using the right tool, and consequences of what happens when you don't. Really appreciate your time, and I hope that you'll all take the opportunity to look back on this, look back at the recording, but as I said before, consider this and how it applies to your professional development. Make sure you include it in your plan, reflect, and act cycle when it comes to CPD. A couple of announcements before I sign off. Good. We're pleased, first of all, to announce the return of the International Quality Awards in 2023. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Well done. We've even got a slide for it. There will be some further details about the event being announced in due course, but for now, please note in your diaries Monday, the 9th of January, which is when applications open. And what better way to start the new year than with an application to the 2023 IQAs. But visit the website quality.org/IQA23 and to find out more, to find out about the process and about this year's categories. And I really would encourage as many of you as possible to consider the awards and whether you're in a position to apply. We've seen some fantastic examples from our members and beyond through the IQAs, and we'd love to hear all of you showcasing the excellent work that you're doing. A reminder for CQI members that the early bird offer for the renewal of membership ends on the 30th of November, so please do be sure to renew before then if you'd like to take advantage of the lower fee. And of course, please do contact us if we can offer any information or assistance around that. That's all from me. My thanks again to Paul for your excellent presentation and Q&A, and thank you most especially to everyone who's attended, who's taken part, who's posted their questions, and may I wish you all the best for the rest of World Quality Week and the other events that you may be participating, and we'll look forward to doing this again in the near future. Thank you very much.